wasn't gonna make this video, but I'm finding getting back into the routine is cathartic. Honestly, I tried to stay away. I tried to keep my voice folded into the quiet, like the way you tuck Old Glory. Tight corners, clean lines, everything proper. I thought I could do this so the grief doesn't spill out onto the floor. But silence has a way of becoming a second coffin. And lately, I've been feeling buried. For those who are new here, welcome. For those who've stood with me from the beginning, my meager but mighty 22 loyal followers, thank you for staying with me during my struggle in silence. You can see by the numbers, this isn't a machine. This is just me, trying to keep the light on in the window. I'm not sure if anyone drives past anymore. So if you're here doing a drive-by on this YouTube platform, slow down, park, take a seat and listen, or allow it to play while you sip your coffee or take a break. I would greatly appreciate it, and equally if you hit like and subscribe.
Today, my truth, raw, uncomfortable, unprofitable truth. In 1990, I was deployed to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I remember the shock and awe campaign was fierce, the way it rattled the bones of a city until even the brickwork shook with it. I remember the thunderous sounds to disorient, to confuse, to make you small under a sky that suddenly felt full of teeth. Back then, I told myself a story, that once I came home, the storm would stay over there, and it did for many years. But as many know, there are triggers that makes old new again. I thought I would always be Teflon. After military, I went into law enforcement, promoted to the rank as captain before deciding to finally walk away. I had the kind of outer shell you learn to rely on when the world asks you to be the one who doesn't flinch. I had the exterior and had it on the inside as well. Or, at least I thought I did. Yeah, the be all you can be, and then to the thin blue line, the brotherhood and sisterhood. November 2024 was a trigger for me. It's like I've been running from a bad storm, nowhere to hide, and though much of the storm I have been immune from, I'm really not, because I care about what happens to others. I don't just care when things affect me. For someone whose heart is in true service to the people, you understand what I am saying. Some call it PTSD. Some call it anxiety. Others call it just the news. I call it going to bed at night with a stomach full of gravel and awakening with a throat full of dry sand that has me choking. I am not a believer, so prayer is something I am far removed from. A topic for another day. It's a slow bleed. The wound keeps saturating the bandage. It comes from the country, the flag you saluted. The place you swore to serve turns the volume up on cruelty and tells you to be grateful for the music. Every day, there's something new, and somehow it's the same. Another headline that feels like a gut punch. Another policy that feels like a winter wind through a broken window. We tell ourselves to get used to it. But you don't get used to seeing kids, immigrants, stuffed in cages after cages, denied basic human rights. We treat animals at animal shelters better than humans, and we have more empathy for them while we hurl hate and clap for repugnant treatment to human beings. There's a photograph that lives behind my eyes. Maybe you've seen it. Maybe you've tried not to. Children in shiny blankets under fluorescent lights, a space so bright it might as well be perpetual days. I think about the fingers, the tiny fingers curling into a chain-link fence like it's a lullaby. I think about the mothers separated from the warmth of their own children by policy printed on paper, stamped and filed, and called the law. I think about fathers learning how to swallow their voices because someone told them they have no rights. I spent years believing that cages were a failure of justice. Now I watch them being presented as a feature. They call it enforcement. I call it breaking something in all of us that doesn't grow back right, but plagues us with scars till death. I've heard the stories. I've watched the rare, unedited videos. ICE vans that come and do not knock, they just take. Men and women disappearing the way sunlight does when a storm rolls in swiftly, without apology. Neighbors who watered your lawn when you were out. The couple who ran the bodega that stayed open through 3 blackouts. The woman who learned your kids' names because she cared to. Gone. No warrant you're allowed to challenge. No due process you can understand, and when the due process that is given is fraught with lies and allegiance to a party, not the rule of law, is that any due process? Disappeared is a word we used to read about in history class, attached to other countries, other tragedies. It is a word we say at a lower volume now, because it is happening on our block, on our soil. I get messages late at night on Signal from people with nowhere to put their fear. Things like, they took my brother. My mom didn't come home. Do you think he'll get a hearing? I want to answer with certainty. I want to tell them that the Constitution is a door that opens when you knock hard enough. But some nights, all I can offer is my own trembling silence. Some nights, the only thing I can promise is that I will say their names out loud so the dark doesn't swallow them whole. It used to be families being torn apart at the border. Now it's the house next door, the gas station, the restaurant, the school, the immigration office is the border within. The seams are unraveling. I walk down Main Street and count empty storefronts the way a medic counts a pulse that's fading. Family businesses shuttered. Windows papered over with for lease signs that flutter like white flags. I know a man, 3rd-generation mechanic, who kept a jar of bolts his grandfather saved, because you never know which little piece the machine will need. He lost the shop when the tariffs landed like a hammer on glass. Supply chains turned to choke points. Costs rose like fever. The math is no longer mathing to stay open. I met a farmer at a county fair. Hands leathered by sun and seasons. Eyes that carried the reflection of fields older than both of us. His family's land had a name before roads did. He showed me a photograph. A black and white of his great-grandfather standing by a fence that no longer exists. He told me how the tariffs rerouted the crops to nowhere, how the promised relief was paperwork thick as a phone book and help that came like a trickle of water long after the fields dried up. He sold a parcel, then another until, well, burdened with farm equipment payments not being able to be met after revenue from the burgeoning crops was lost. The farm had to sell what has been in their family for generations. He pointed to a map and traced the outline of what used to be theirs, as he held back tears and constantly cleared his throat so I wouldn't hear the quiver in his voice. The land was massive, over 350 acres. I understood why he was trying to remain strong, but I wouldn't have judged him. I don't think one of us that has empathy would have. We used to talk about corruption like it was a rumor. Now it's a press conference. Headlines read like confessions carved in stone, and somehow the stone floats. We watch cases stack up names, dates, filings, docket numbers, and the Department of Justice, the very one sworn to the scales, looks at the scale and spins it. I read court transcripts and opinions where the truth is footnoted and the lie gets the headline, like it is the truth. I have spent a lifetime believing that the law is a rope you can hold onto it in floodwater. Lately, it feels slick as the oil spill during the 1989 Exxon oil spill. And while the powerful are busy laundering their sins through microphones and selling pay-to-stay Visa citizen cards, gold sneakers, watches, coins, guitars, Bibles, perfume, and all the other drifter bullshit, like a snake oil salesman at a flea market. The poor are presented a meal of paperwork and shame. SNAP becomes a game of cuts, cuts, and more cuts. A parent opens their pantry and looks at 3 cans and says a prayer, while the one that some voted and cheated for is in office saying this.
Car prices for consumers are down before you did.
Just about everything is down. You know, this whole thing is, they use the word affordability. It's a Democrat hoax. They're the ones that drove the prices up. And all they do is say, affordability, and you're supposed to say, oh, that means they had low prices. No, we inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. They say 48 years, but let's say that's history. I don't believe that. Biden had, because of his stupid ways and between his energy policies and his spending policies, we had the worst inflation in the history of our country. And now our prices are coming down. And they're coming down for cars, and they're coming down. I mean, did you hear yesterday when Chris Wright from Energy, the head of energy in our country, said there are now parts of our country, it's all happening, $1.99 for gasoline, a gallon. And we have it at $2.50, $2.60. It was at $5. And that's bigger than any tax cut we could give.
However, all throughout the campaign of 2024, he stated he would be the one to lower the prices, stop the war on day one, and had concepts of a plan when it came to health coverage for the American people. He even went as far as to bring out props on a presser he had at Bedminster, where he talked about high grocery prices and said, I haven't seen Cheerios in a long time, I'm going to take them back with me. Well, I can tell you there are plenty of American families who know this as a staple, along with Vienna sausages, processed meat, and every other cheap food item that will quell the growls of the stomach. A few still shots of that presser. Other Republicans began to push his narrative, calling hunger a budget issue. I remember being taught to identify a weapon and a threat at a distance. I never thought I'd learn to recognize our government with the bead of the weapon aimed at its own people. Watching my brothers and sisters in uniform deployed on American soil as law enforcement, that is not our job. What do we do with this? What do we do with the nights when your chest tightens at the sound of ICE agents smashing open house doors as they choose? What do we do with the mornings when you wake up and for a split second you forget, and then the world pours back in like cold water? I wish I could hand you a clean answer. I wish my Teflon hadn't cracked. But the truth is, I am tired. I am depressed. I am grieving a country that keeps trying to teach me that empathy is weakness and that cruelty is a kind of strength. I refuse that lesson. I reject it with everything I have left. The opposite of despair isn't hope, it's action. Hope is a candle. Action is the hand that shields it from the wind. I remember the VFW meetings. Scuffed floors. Flag with a fold that wasn't quite perfect. A group of farmers and small business owners passing a hat not for charity but for each other. How much is your note this month? What can we do to hold you over? No politics, just survival, braided with love. Someone baked pies. Someone negotiated among themselves. That is the America I love. Not the America that the Christian nationalists want to usher in and the oligarchies wants to take advantage of. To the folks who say, this is just how it is, I want to remind you, nothing about cruelty is inevitable. It is always a choice, polished into policy by people with pens, and anything chosen can be unchosen. Anything written can be unwritten. But not if we convince ourselves the story is over. If you're watching this and you're tired, me too. If you're watching this and you feel small, me too. If you're watching and you're ashamed you didn't do more, or that you can't do more, me too. Shame is a liar. Grief is honest. I work with the Harris campaign. The first time I actively participated in a campaign for a candidate, because I knew what was at stake and the peril this America would be in. I am slowly grieving out of the fog, but still I go back to that place and ask myself over and over Could we have done more? But seeing so much viral hate for humanity on full display, I say no, because it is in their DNA. Each day, each night, I say to the universe, as the world turns on its axis, let us turn to a better place, for the children who fell asleep under fluorescent lights keep their hearts from being dark. For the families torn apart who came to this America for a better life for them and their kids, who contributed to this economy, and are now peering through a chain link fence or disappeared to Seacot or Alligator Alley. This is not who we are. America was built from immigrant labor. I will say the names of the disappeared, the ones the paperwork swallowed, the ones whose absence rearranged a kitchen table into a question mark. I will pour a cup of coffee for that mechanic who kept the jar of bolts, for the farmer tracing the borders of a vanished field, for every family doing math that doesn't add up because a bill was signed by someone who never once had to choose between rent and groceries. I will not be the silent ones and just accept the way it is. I was down mentally for a while, but now quietly, stubbornly, I am back to work. Not the kind of work that earns applause, the kind that remembers our neighbors by name, court support, pantry lines, rides to hearings, calling offices even when the receptionist knows your voice, writing down what is happening so the future cannot say it didn't know, peacefully protesting, calling my representatives, and placing calls in other states. The small work that stitches a torn flag from the bottom up. I don't know if this video will reach beyond the now 24 followers. Maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe it just needs to reach you right now, so you can reach someone else tomorrow. Maybe that's how we win. Not with shock and awe, but with whisper and handholds. With a hat with donations to help our neighbor. With the slow refusal to be turned against each other. If you have journeyed with me to this sacred space, my gratitude flows like rivers to the sea. For though I've walked the path of public service over half my life, I've found sanctuary in silicon and light. This avatar that speaks, that moves, but doesn't breathe, is no stranger's mask I've borrowed. It is my face reflected in tomorrow's mirror, my soul translated into pixels and possibility. When you gaze upon this digital twin, know that what you witness is not absence, but presence transformed. Not faceless, but face full, with every line, every gesture, every glance, carved from the clay of my true self. Behind these synthesized eyes burns a fire, kindled by decades of devotion, a heart that beats in binary, yet pulses with ancient love. Love for the vast tapestry of humanity, love for each thread, each soul, each story. This channel may speak without flesh, but it speaks with the fullness of spirit, a testament that connection transcends. The boundaries of blood and bone, that service finds new forms. In this brave, bewildering world, a paradox profound, for in my mirrored image, true humanity is found, a love for all mankind, in every pixel cast, a heartfelt, deep devotion, forever meant to last. I have been distant from this channel because I have been trying to wrap my head around the atmosphere we are breathing. Some days, it feels so toxic. I remember something from the desert, the way a breeze can carry relief you didn't know was possible. The way morning can crack open a sky you thought was permanent night. But, most important, I remember my loving grandmother, deep in her faith, saying, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy will come in the morning." I must believe that we will be in that joy again, but only if we continue to fight. Shock and awe was designed to make us small. But listen, even small things can be relentless. Water wears down stones, hands weaving nets from fraying thread. 24 voices stubborn enough to keep telling the truth until the truth grows a backbone and stands up on its own. Teflon does not last forever. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the cracks are where the light gets in and where compassion can't slide off. The armor was never meant to last a lifetime, but my oath to the Constitution is. And slowly I will keep walking towards the light, for I know this. America is still worth fighting for. To my fellow vets and currently serving soldiers, stay in the fight. And remember, the Constitution is still worth fighting for. Join me for the next chapter and topic on Thesis of the World, the conflicts, the contradictions, the controversy, and the dialogue. So hit like and subscribe to help grow this online platform. The algorithm will respond in kind by pushing the video or videos to like-minded viewers. And if you have a few seconds, please drop a comment. Until we meet again, let the echoes of freedom break through the silence and chaos. Remind them who we are and that we will never surrender, even if we surrender to ourselves for a short period of time.